Portal. Portal is one of my personal favourite franchises. I could live and breathe Portal if I so had to. I love Portal so much. Every Portal game is special. Portal 1 is charming, Portal 2 is iconic, the lab crashes on my device constantly, Aperture Hand Lab, I can't play it, Aperture Desk Job is a tech demo, and Bridge Constructor Portal. The point I'm making is that the Portal franchise doesn't give much in the sense of bonus content, lest you own a 7th gen console, the console that has the equivalent amount of power to them, or the doohickey. Thankfully, Valve is a somewhat vaguely pro-consumer company, and Valve fan games are a staple of any Valve IP, seeing as most of them are on the sides of milk cartons in terms of new game releases. Black Mesa, Team Fortress Classic, the bustling Left 4 Dead modding scene, and okay, well, I'm sure there's something out there for Dota and Counter-Strike, but those franchises never had my love or concern. Portal, however, may be the most fan-gamed of the Valve family, owing to how simple the concepts are and how tools like the Perpetual Testing Initiative and the fan modifications like B2 have made it incredibly easy and open. Hell, I've done some. They were abysmal. I was 14. Whether it's the Portal 1 fan games like Rexora or Prelude, the Portal 2 fan games like Mel and Reloaded, or the wacky ones like the Flash version, there's enough Portal to satiate a Portal fan for maybe an extra 15 hours. However, comparing fan games is a difficult and subjective gauntlet, so we're going to set the ground rules of, I'm only talking about Portal 2 fan games and they have to be on Steam. This does mean we won't be talking about Rexora or Prelude or Portal Stories VR, but Portal Stories VR doesn't run on my headset anyway. But yes, 5 Portal 2 fan games, 1 video, story, design, gameplay, puzzle design, and the ever mysterious tiebreaker that is miscellaneous. Here's for another episode of Yuxa Versus. Wait, no, fired that guy. Proto Versus doesn't sound as good. Well, I need to think about that one for a bit. We're starting off with the fan game that introduced me and probably many others to the concept of a Portal fan game, Aperture Tag. Aperture Tag released in the summer of 2014, a fan game that replaced the Portal gun with a gel gun. The player can shoot bounce and speed gel similar to the Digipen game that inspired it. Unlike the power of paint, there's no sign of the adhesion gel, though seeing as it was cut from Portal 2 for being motion sickening, maybe for the better. We've covered this before, but that was over 3 years ago, so it basically didn't happen. Aperture Tag takes place after Portal 2's end, with a whole new unrelated cast. You play as an unnamed human, seemingly brought from the Human Vault scene at the end of the Portal 2 co-op. The core supervising you is Nigel, a core who seems to operate independently from but as an employee of GLaDOS. To my understanding, he was the first instance of this in a fan game, making him the Oppenheimer to the fan game core epidemic. Unless we count Meet the Cause, but I don't have it in me to blame Peak Cinema. Aperture Tag rocks a milquetoast story that more exists to structure the levels than tell a narrative, but features a variety of Easter eggs and secrets and a secret ending that they blatantly choreograph to you. There's an air of disrespect to the player's intelligence here, but they probably saw one too many Let's Players completely missing the secret ending and wondering why the game's normal ending, the one where you just die and the game ends, was so jarring. That being said, the alternate ending where you get into a surface elevator and then immediately get hoodwinked isn't a major improvement. While it's basic and simple, it doesn't tread on pre-established events in any ways that cheapen them, so I'm not going to complain. At the end of the day, a puzzle game with a weak story is like a dodo with small wings. They weren't doing much anyway. Just so we're clear, design in this context means aesthetics, the way the game looks. Cool? Cool. Now, being a Portal fan game built off the same engine, it's going to look like Portal 2, but it's about what you do with those assets, and Aperture Tag does an alright job. There's 4 themes, those being old Aperture, overgrown-ish, clean, and what can only be described as Truman Show. Old Aperture is just old-school 50s Aperture, but with modern elements sprinkled in to convey that Aperture's beginning to recolonize their old history. It's a bit visually conflicting, but it's fine. There's a lot of pipes though. Aperture Tag has, for lack of better terminology, pipe mania. Someone on the team figured out how to recreate this pipe scene from the end of Portal 2 Chapter 5 and decided that this would be a big part of the game's identity. I like them. but some of them go on a bit too long. Much too long. There is such a thing as being too proud. Overgrown and clean look exactly as you'd expect. Overgrown is trimmed back since the facility is up and running, and clean is clean. Shocker. The chambers in Aperture Tag are very open plan and usually have death pits. This is to stop the voices from convincing you to paint the walls blue top to bottom and create the bounce chamber. They may win this battle, but the voices never leave for long. Going back to that Truman Show theme I mentioned earlier, well, what am I supposed to say about this? It's got swimmable water and a pretty one-to-one Truman Show reference. It's got a bunch of weird themes that feel more like bad theme park rides than Aperture Science tests. It was a great concept, but I think that's just me trying not to be rude. Unsurprisingly, Aperture Tag's meat is the gameplay. The paint gun replaces the portal gun, and as mentioned before, you can shoot the blue and orange gels from the game. This makes the puzzles mainly revolve around momentum and precision, as opposed to the more timing and sequentially ordered Portal 2 chambers. This creates a whole new way to play and solve Portal 2 puzzles, and that's pretty neat. Now, as fun as it is, there's a major drawback to this, though it requires some explaining. Source engine spaghetti is a term used to describe the state of the source engine for a reason. The source engine, even by 2011, was held together with duct tape and glue. Portal 2's gels are an especially egregious instance of this, and making them the mainstay mechanic kind of adds a bit too much cheese to this fettuccine alfredo. If you can get past the scripted events being a little wonky and the gels being a lot of wonky, it's still a good game that's really fun when it works. When it works. Puzzle quality is by and far the most important part of a Portal fan game. In the roast dinner of a fan game, it's the, I already used the meat, might have messed up the metaphor, Yorkshire puddings. Since the Aperture Tag designers made a whole new gameplay style, it unsurprisingly has decent puzzles that feel unique to the game. There's a few instances of puzzle mechanics not being well explained or disclosed, so it's far from perfect. There's even some chambers recycled directly from the Portal 2 campaign, which is fine since it's the same chamber but with new mechanics. There's also a variety of race course stages, time trials that use the speed and bounce gels combined with some extreme timing elements. These can be fun, but admittedly there's an element of trial and error to these that makes them a bit frustrating when you die mere seconds from the end. Tell the truth, I have too much love for style points and might have died a few times trying the Tony Hawk spin in midair. As for the difficulty, it's decently simple and quite rapidly escalates. Like a speed bump, except you're going 250 miles an hour in a sports car with no suspension. It's sudden, and you're in a lot of pain when it's done. Admittedly, Aperture Tag hasn't aged well in the last 10 years since it came out, but it's still a really good play with some decent mechanics. Nigel is not really a showstopper, but that's because most of his personality is being a corporate shill. The game has some rough edges, the music is inoffensive, and the game costs a few quid on Steam compared to the rest of these titles which are free. Worth the price? I'd argue yes. Next on the list, Portal Reloaded came out the day after my first video on Portal 2, so I've never actually had a chance to talk about it. It's also now been over 3 years since that first video. Dear God. Portal Reloaded is a simple story. Set prior to the events of Portal 1, I think, you're woken up as some sort of contingency plan who will save the facility from decay by being talented with a portal gun. If it isn't obvious, it's implied that you spend the game jumping before and after GLaDOS' fall. Once more, there's 2 endings. You either accept your destiny and get put into storage, most likely to be never woken up, or you escape and get presumably killed by headcrab zombies. Either way, your impact on the timeline in this game about time travel is nothing. There's only 2 major visual styles in this game, present day and the overgrown future. The normal chambers look very normal, and the overgrown chambers look not very overgrown. There's definitely the in-universe explanation of this being closer to Portal 1 than 2, but there's also the gameplay explanation of these puzzles needing to look somewhat similar in order to make the time portals functional. Also, as this game is about a half-decade separated from the first wave of Portal 2 fan games, it's no surprise that the lighting looks nicer. The portals have this glow to them that looks, for lack of better phrasing, very nice. Portal Reloaded finally does the one thing that the Portal 3 memes joked about for a decade, adding a third portal. However, since the first two portals conquered space, this third portal aims to conquer time. The time portal, as you'd expect, allows you to go between the clean present and the disheveled future. This has to be one of the coolest concepts of any of the fan games we're talking about today, as it completely upends the way you have to think about portal puzzles, as you now have to stretch the order of operations across two timelines, as one cube becomes two portals become four, and one headache becomes one larger headache. This game requires a heavy dosage of understanding for causality. Puzzle quality here is high. Each puzzle is built around the time travel mechanic, and thereby every puzzle uses this. The two main uses of this are cube duplication and momentum, as time portals function as mirrors, sending you into the other timeline with the exact same speed you went in with. Objects from the future can go into the present, but not vice versa, and if an object is moved in the present, it changes where it appears in the future, so most puzzles revolve around bringing an element into the present or setting something up to be in a specific place in the future. Sometimes it's just flinging with extra steps. One thing I do want to note is the tiny detail of every puzzle accounting for unintended solutions. Once you have access to the time portal, every chamber can be solved in the wrong timeline. Though to solve a puzzle in the wrong timeline usually requires you disagreeing with game design and fighting like a salmon upstream until you cheese the game. Cool it exists though, right? Music is serviceable, but nothing that stuck with me. Slightly more crucially, this game has multiplayer. However, it simply splits the portal gun and the time portal gun into two separate devices controlled by two players, which doesn't make for the most interesting puzzles. That being said, 4 portals plus 2 time portals would be unpleasant to design for, so I don't blame them. Points for adding it. Portal Stories Mel was my favourite Portal fan game when I first covered Portal fan games back in 2021. However, now that I'm analytically picking these games apart rather than just going on feelings, will my opinions change? Probably not. Portal Stories Mel takes place between the events of Portal 1 and Portal 2. Playing as Mel, shocker I know, you start in the 1950s before being put into the short-term relaxation vault for an undefined amount of time, but long enough for the entire timeline to happen without you. Seriously, between going into and out of this bed, the entire Half-Life franchise happens. Woken up by Virgil, you need to escape the facility or die trying, as Aegis, GLaDOS' weird younger sibling, tries to kill you, Virgil, and as is revealed after killing him, GLaDOS. Mel's story suffers from the limitation of needing to wrap itself up with no consequences by the end, though does end with the events of Portal 2 beginning. There's only one ending to Mel, and in it she escapes to the surface, hopefully to have a somewhat amicable life in whatever is left of society. Virgil's like 100% gonna die down there though, right? Portal Stories Mel might have the nicest looking chambers out of any of these games, split between old Aperture, normal, overgrown, and behind the scenes, with them all looking populated, detailed, and busy. Especially overgrown. These chambers look arguably better than the base game. Everywhere you look in Mel, there's hidden details to be found. It's harder to find cracks in the wall that are missing additional details. I shudder to think of how much time it must have taken to add all these little things, and shudder even more to imagine how much it must have impacted the frame rate. Another theme I want to spotlight is the first, 1954. It's odd to see the world of Portal alive, even if for a moment. The spattering of Combine citizen models in Aperture jumpsuits isn't something worth drawing attention to on its own, but the fact that they're all doing something, making this ghost town of a facility alive, if even for a few minutes, is commendable. However, it's also worth noting that they're all well outside the playable space, making the areas of 1954 you can traverse questionably empty. Good aesthetics and a fascinating story are one thing, but what new mechanics did this game add? None whatsoever. If you're being pedantic, there's the Death Fizzler, but that's not new to Mel. This game thrives on remixing and rearranging old mechanics in new ways, though with the gloves entirely off from the start. I can't give it points for nothing though. No new mechanics, but as mentioned before, this just lets Mel start with the gloves off and get even harder. Mel's puzzles are in a whole other league, and by the end the puzzles can and will stump you for hours on a first playthrough. amazing quality throughout. That being said, there is a point where, for me at least, Mel starts to feel like you're defusing a bomb rather than solving a puzzle. However, this is something the doctors have called a skill issue, and Mel has a remedy for this: story mode. I wasn't the only one who thought Mel was too hard, and a year or so after the game released, story mode was added, which sands down the game's difficulty to make it more palatable for the average player. This being said, hard mode isn't unfair. There's no moment where they stuff a mechanic in a back room that you have to sweep the room to find, and no new mechanics come out of nowhere, mainly since there's no new mechanics to introduce, except the Death Fizzler, again. The music of this game is a sea of good songs, with a few that pull ahead and others that fall behind. Its biggest flaw is the amount of times you'll hear them while solving the songs. It goes from a nice little tune to a disorientating CIA torture method after 30 minutes, so I won't criticize the music's design. I will simply say that some songs hurt my brain after being in the puzzle a little too long. There is one major criticism I have for this game. The final act with Aegis kind of runs out of steam. The Portal boss fights have always been a choice, but Aegis especially falls a little flat. While it has a fun mechanic, Aegis himself doesn't command the presence of the other Portal bosses. Thinking with Time Machine. The story takes place directly after Portal 2 and completely ruins its ending. Atlas and Peabody, who have shown no malcontent to GLaDOS beforehand, suddenly try to kill her, and you need to find a time machine back to January 20th, 2021. Boy, do I wish I could. There's a lot of life decisions I've made that I'd like to undo, namely the ones that led up to me playing this game. The aesthetics of Thinking with Time Machine have this hyper-futuristic design, which makes no sense canonically. This is hours after Portal 2, but also functionally, as it breaks the white equals portalable surface rule that the game spent so much time conditioning us to follow. For every interesting concept, like the cubes being built in front of you, there's a bad concept, like these giant windows out of the chamber, or the fact that every panel is a light source. This logically must have taken a lot of time, but it still somehow feels rushed and lazy. The whole game reeks of this. The time machine mechanic is so stupid, I hate it so much. You have to record and play back your own actions, which essentially means this is co-op but by yourself. It also means the game can justify some really weird mechanics, because why should I have to Mario and Luigi bounce bros my way to a button? Why? The puzzle mechanics. Oh boy, the puzzle mechanics. They're all weird and go mostly unexplained, and I will now illustrate to you by showing clips of my playthrough. I've got my microphone on for this one because I know I'm going to have some really funny reactions on this one.
Do you have me on for this one?
Yeah, you're also audible.
Yeah.
Okay, I did make it further than this before. I think I remember this exact chamber as well. Hey CJ, knock knock.
Goodbye.
Gramophone. Boat.
Oh, hey.
Couldn't afford voice actors. GLaDOS. The step ladder! It's all the step ladder's fault! That's not an actual door, that's a physics object. They got her ass! They got her ass! They're sicking her! They got her ass! Oh, I had to press a button. Yeah, oh, but that makes sense. I had to press a button on here. And now also, why would GLaDOS have a test chamber this close to her, like, abode? She doesn't do that. Also, why is half of the chamber missing? Also, making them villains doesn't make sense because GLaDOS has been shown to have full control over them. The second they tried to do something against her, they should have just been detonated. What? Oh, he's mad. He's mad. He's angry. He's angry. That's the thing, by the way. The drop button is right next to the record button, so I accidentally just messed up my own recording. Time travel is a fun concept for a Portal fan game. But I don't like how in this, time is travelling around you. Sorry, I'm gamer focused right now.
You need to focus on this.
A second! God damn it! I gotta do it all again in reverse! No, do you see how tedious this is, though? No! Free my man! He did nothing wrong! I don't get like a moment of, ah, clever. I'm like done from this. I get a moment of thank that's over. I don't want to do that again. No, I definitely think they beat the Portal games. I just think they didn't understand what made those puzzles so fascinating and fun. Okay, so that needs to... Huh? What is that on the ceiling? The nicest thing I can say about this game is, if these were co-op puzzles, I'm sure they would be kind of fun. What? Huh? No. We aren't just gonna gloss over that. This goes against one of the... This is the thing, right? If, like, they drew your attention to it and been like, these buttons are on the ceiling, you'll never guess how you have to solve this puzzle. It would have been fine. It's the fact there's no voiceover, no one talking to you, no music at all, no voice acting, no anything. Also, they made the pipes bigger so they're more visible. Those pipes look way too... Oh, and it's going... That's going to the... Why is it changed so massively? Why did you have to retcon Portal 2's ending? Can you tell which game's going to be coming last place in the Fangame Battle Royale?
The second one that you played. Is that a portable... Is that a portable surface without a portal sign? So they broke their own rule.
I am Zen. I am tranquil. Oh, the game crashed. And that, CJ, is what we call the end of the recording session. If the game crashes, I'm not playing it. Those of you in the audience who wish to argue, but it came out first, I don't care. It beat Aperture Tag by 3 months, and Aperture Tag's held up pretty well. As a matter of fact, this game feels like it was rushed to beat Aperture Tag out the gate, the game developer equivalent of shouting first. This game is... This game's mediocre. Bad, even. Let's move on. Right at the start of 2024, Revolution came screaming onto the Steam pages. It's one hell of a palate cleanser after what the previous game put me through, but will being the newest automatically make it the best? Let's break this down. Taking place in between Portal 1 and Portal 2, Take a Shot, woken up from human storage, test subject number 1, as they're referred to as, is woken by Sterling, a core whose accent I cannot place, but dialogue I can, as he's essentially... well, not Diet Wheatley, but more like Wheatley Cherry. Once your time with Sterling is over, you're introduced to the other core, Conley. Conley is friendly and helpful, mainly due to her nature as a backup of a human, rather than a personality construct. She's expository in spots, but she's engaging and interesting enough to carry the second half of the plot. Both cores are interesting, charming, and this game has the rare award of actually making a joke that made me laugh out loud. A feat you don't usually see in a Portal fan game, or any game for that matter. The ending is a bit abrupt and somber, and comes a little bit out of left field, so I wouldn't say that the story is perfect, but there's an unfortunate through line of unsatisfying endings that run through all of these fan games, their placement on the timeline being the major cause for it. That being said, the ending is open-ended, so maybe in another half-decade we'll see Portal Lunacy or some other moon-themed sequel fan game. Revolution mainly takes place over 3 themes. Semi-broken Aperture is the first, and something we've seen before in Mel at a similar quality. The other 2 themes we see are much more interesting though. 80s old Aperture is a fascinating theme and really fits well into the timeline. It shows Aperture in the messy period after Cave Johnson's passing, and the confusion that comes with it. There's this interesting middle ground in the design philosophies that bridge the old and the new, and while it didn't stick out to me on a first playthrough, a second really made me appreciate it. The other new theme is Overgrown with a skybox. Conceptually, this isn't very fascinating, but visually it is lovely. It's remarkable what adding a simple open sky can do for the feeling of the chambers. It's great, but this is the 4th fan game to throw this theme at me. I like cake, but maybe I'm getting overfed here. But to round this section out on a high note, the Strata Source modification created for a fan game not released yet looks very nice and runs even nicer, though I'll probably talk about this some other day. The game is nice is what I'm saying. Revolution seems to only add 3 mechanics, or at least 3 mechanics that I meaningfully identified. Pneumatic tubes are something we've seen in a few of these games, but they take a pretty strong presence here. These aren't original to the game, they were planned to be in Portal 2 and got cut, but seeing them as a treat, even if they are a little broken in spots. The cleansing field is the third in a triforce of emancipators. We have one for portal and objects, one for players, and now we have one for gels. It's just a sprinkler wall that destroys all gel. They're simple yet so genius. I'm assuming these are original to the mod, they might have been invented somewhere else first. Quantum cubes. They're like a splice of portals and laser cubes. Laser goes in one, laser goes out the other one. This is one of the coolest and most interesting portal mechanics I've seen. I'm sure it was a nightmare to get working, and you never get more than one pair of these at a time, but I love everything about these. Puzzles deliver everything you could possibly ask for. New and interesting puzzles using the singular portal device? Check. New puzzles using both new mechanics and old mechanics in new ways? Check. Recycled chambers from Portal 2 in a new context? There's one that's awfully reminiscent to Portal 1, but otherwise, no. Revolution is just cool, clever, and interesting. The puzzles never overstay their welcome, only one or two of them really stumped me, and I never felt so frustrated that I had to cheat or look up a guide. Absolutely splendid. That being said, I would have loved to see more. The game is a 4-hour campaign. For me it was a 4-hour campaign, but for others it might be like 7 or 8. And yet I came away from it hungering for more. Each chapter revolves around a mechanic, and each chapter has 10 or so chambers. I shouldn't be feeling a hungering for more of this, but I do. Perhaps a challenge mode would have satiated my desire and humbled my intellect, but I also realised this mod already took 8 years to go from concept to release, and I'm not about to ask for an update that would take 3 more years. The music of this game is... I can't remember a single track from it. The core designs are very nice, and there's a few Easter eggs I still don't know the meaning of. The achievements are fun, and you can get all of them in about 1 or 2 playthroughs. I also have no clue how I forgot to mention this, so I'm having to add it in post. There's a custom portal gun. It's kinda major, I just forgot to bring it up. I have a critique though. Not bad, not big, nothing major, just... I don't like ladders. This game uses ladders and spots, and I don't like seeing ladders in a portal game. I shouldn't be able to climb a ladder with a portal gun, and I really shouldn't be able to climb a ladder with a portal gun while holding a weighted storage cube. I'm sure that the designs of the test chamber meant you couldn't do anything else here, so I'm not about to dock points for a ladder inclusion, but you couldn't have made a really small elevator? Or slopes? Just a ladder? Really? Revolution is really good. Better than Mel? That'll have to wait until we get there. The last time I talked about Portal 2 fan games, a Portal 2 fan game came out a day later. While making this script, 2 different Portal 2 fan games came out. One I expected, and the other got disqualified. So here's me giving a quick acknowledgement to all the other Portal 2 fan games that, as of writing this script, I know of. This is also my insurance policy if I somehow missed a Portal 2 fan game somewhere. Starting with the one I've already mentioned in this video, Portal 2 Community Edition seems like it's gonna be pretty damn good. An improved version of the level creator with its own campaign. That's awesome. Portal Desolation is a mod I found about 24 hours before writing this segment, and oh my. This game might dethrone the champions if it plays its cards right. The arm cannon and test designs I've seen in their promotional videos are already making my brain light up like a switchboard. While there's no sign of this mod coming out on Steam soon, it doesn't even have a Steam page, I will be there day 1 when it releases. Destroyed Aperture is... well, I'll be real, I've eaten the overgrown Aperture Science cake one too many times and I'm a little bit stuffed. That being said, this game looks promising and it's high up on my wish list. Portal 2 Confinement is actually already out, but I wouldn't call it a fan game. It's a series of Steam Workshop levels that have been haphazardly stitched into a Steam game. And when I say haphazardly, I mean there's no major story, it doesn't really add anything new or interesting, and the puzzles are designed to be solved by 2 people, yet this mod is single player. You need console commands to play this game properly. See why it was disqualified? Portal Bagley? Bagley? I'm gonna say Bagley. Portal Bagley looks... well, it's being made by one guy. I'm not gonna say it'll be bad because of that. Quite a few of the other mods here were made by a small team. And if this guy could just get a few other people to help him, I think this mod could really go somewhere. As it stands, I'm probably not going to keep up with this mod religiously, but I'll pop in to see how it's doing every couple of months. Portal Ambition is actually a Portal 1 fan game, but it still looks interesting, so it's on my radar. Hey, remember when I joked about Portal Lunacy? I fact-checked the name just to make sure no one was using it, and yeah, there's a fan mod on ModDB using this name, but the last update was 2 years ago, and it doesn't look very promising for the mod. Yeah, never mind. This video took so long to come out that it came back to life. Speaking of ModDB, there's hundreds of mods in there for Portal 2, but that's part of why I've avoided it. With all due respect, if your mod is big enough to be a challenger to the big boys, it'll be on Steam and not just shadow dropped onto ModDB. Same goes for the Steam Workshop. After Hours is cool, but until I see it popping up on my Steam wishlist, it's not going to hit my arbitrary classification for Fangame. What are the odds I've somehow missed a Fangame that comes out in the next few months? High. Concerningly high. Here's hoping Revolution inspires a third wave of Fangames like Mel and Portal 2 did before it. So, to conclude, how do these games score overall? Pretty depressing that for the first time in this series I've found a game I deem worthy of a full 0 score. It seems the old adage proves true. First, the worst. Since that didn't change anything, Aperture Tag is also eliminated. The point gap here is pretty severe, but I don't want you to think that it's bad. It's just that compared to the other 3 remaining contenders, it didn't really have a chance. The paint gun is fun, but between the jankiness of the gels and having to pay actual money for the game, it never stood a chance. Ooh, that's moved us out of deadlock for first, but third place has been clear for a while now. Portal Reloaded is really good, please don't take this point gap as a sign it's not. In the original draft of this video, before Revolution came out, it actually tied with Mel out of the gate. But after Revolution came out, that small gap opened up wider. It's still a genuinely fun fan game with a lot of passion behind it, do not sleep on it, it just can't hold a candle to our final 2. And with a very narrow margin, Mel pulls out with a single point lead. This is why we use this voting system, everybody. It's a little more complicated, but a lot more fun to watch. Portal Revolution was smart, it was creative, and most shocking of all, it made me genuinely laugh out loud. It had a fun narrative and some excellent gameplay mechanics, but the puzzle quality itself lacked a certain quantity that Mel delivered, and the scenery covered wasn't as bountiful as Mel's. That being said, the design point was a close race. The outside sections of Revolution genuinely could have swung the entire contest, they are that goddamn beautiful. Honestly, if it were up to me, I'd make these games tie. Oh, well, actually, I could do that, couldn't I? Oh. Portal Stories Mel and Portal Revolution tie. Sorry for the cop-out, and if you put a gun to my head, I'd side with Mel, but part of that might be the fact I've had chances to do repeated playthroughs of Mel, and only 2 for Revolution. If Revolution adds anything in an update, it'll probably tick over and steal first place in the miscellaneous category. They just need a core Easter egg like Mel did, obviously. My DMs are open for the cynicism core. Just kidding, aha, unless... Mel is a bloody excellent game. It's got a great setting, a bittersweet story, some good writing, some fun Easter eggs, and excellent attention to detail. But for the reason of declaring a winner, it's winner by a decimal point margin. It's still worth commending that Mel has ascended to the throne of best Portal fan game in my head and has fought off 2 different attempts on its position. Here's to many more years of being on top, Mel. As long as that cynicism core isn't added, I suppose.